A fifth of all of humanity speaks, writes, thinks, and prays in the language born on these isles and perfected in the pages of Shakespeare and Dickens and Tolkien, Lewis, Orwell, and Kipling.
While I still have the freedom of speech as protected by the First Amendment of the Constitution, let's start today with the state dinner in the United Kingdom with King Charles yesterday, last evening. Donald Trump, look, there's a lot of talk and conjecture about the intellect of Donald Trump. I take part in that dialogue. There's been a lot of talk for many, many years about Donald Trump's inability to read or to read well. We know he can read. We know that he's functionally literate. He's not a guy who, when he gets on an elevator or sees a warning sign outside of a sidewalk, that he's just perplexed and doesn't know what it says. But when faced with words that are any greater than a junior high level, Donald Trump struggles. But before we get to that, let's talk about how embarrassing it is to have Donald Trump as president. We have a mouth breather as president of the United States. In fact, I've seen this picture before. Does this look familiar to you? Is that Big Bird and Snuffleupagus? I mean, come on. The resemblance is uncanny, is it not? Is it not? And I know you might be thinking, well, that's one picture. You can't make that kind of a, what? Another one? In fact, in this one, Snuffleupagus has a bow tie on. He's ready for the evening. He's ready for a state dinner, standing next to Big Bird, who is appropriately, I mean, it's just, the internet is replete with images, the action figures, if you will, the figurines, the toys of Big Bird and Snuffleupagus, which, by the way, I had no idea that Snuffleupagus was spelled that way. I think it's Snuffleupagus. I think I'm saying it wrong. But look, it's entrenched in my brain how to pronounce it from childhood. I knew I'd seen that picture before. Now on to why we absolutely should be embarrassed, and that's Donald Trump's inability to act like an adult, to speak like an adult, to read like an educated adult. I mean, he ostensibly is an Ivy League educated individual, is he not? He traded statements, prepared remarks at the dinner, and he's not well. Health-wise, he's not well. I mean, even in this clip, I'm going to play this brief moment from the beginning of his remarks. And he seems so winded that he puts his hand up on his hip like, man, this is really taxing. Standing up and reading words from a one-page statement really is taking a lot out of me. Watch this moment. And then we'll get to him just strugglicious on reading.
Your Majesty, Melania and I are deeply grateful to you and Queen Camilla for your extraordinary graciousness. And to William and Kate, thank you so much. It's been so great being with you today. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It's a singular privilege to be the first American president welcomed here. And if you think about it, it's a lot of presidents, and this was the second state visit, and that's the first, and maybe that's going to be the last time. I hope it is, actually. But this is truly one of the highest honors of my life. Such respect for you and such respect for your country.
It's not just me, right? He doesn't seem well. I mean, he feigns, he puts on the brave face, as brave as Donald Trump can muster, being a coward and all. But he does not seem well. I mean, for all of the talk about Joe Biden's diminished state and how all of the conspiracy theories around Joe Biden, he didn't act like that. This is alarming. And we can't rely on anything the government says. We cannot rely on anything that any physician of Donald Trump says, because it's peppered with just lies and conspiracy and nonsense, from his height to his weight to his cognitive ability. It's a nightmare. And the cognitive ability thing, really, it should be of concern to every American who cares about the actual proper functioning of our government, with a leader like Donald Trump, who has what might be described as like a third or fourth grade level, like an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old level of reading comprehension. Watch this as he struggles. If only we had the text from the page to see how it was phonetically spelled out or whatever. This is alarming.
Many years ago, His Majesty opened his archives to a biographer. Among the documents was a letter from 1993 in which he described the patriotism and guided his many projects. He wrote that he was, quote, entirely motivated by a desperate desire to put the great back into Great Britain. In the finest tradition of British sovereigns, he has given his whole heart, everything he's got, to those parts of Britain that are beyond the realm of mere legislation. It's not easy, but which define its essence and its virtue, its harmony and its soul. It's an amazing calling, and there's nobody that's answered that calling like you have. A fifth of all of humanity speaks, writes, thinks, and prays in the language born on these isles and perfected in the pages of Shakespeare and Dickens and Tolkien, Lewis, Orwell, and Kipling. Incredible people, unbelievable people like we have rarely seen before, probably won't see again.
He's given his whole heart to make Britain strong again. That's quite something, is it not? I mean, look, it's an entirely different thing when you're reading words off paper. One, he doesn't want to admit that his hearing is going because he's such a strong, mighty alpha male. He doesn't want to admit that he needs glasses, the assistance of technology to help him read, to help him see. But I don't think it's that. I think it's really the words, the complexity of the words on the page. That's why they have to write in one-syllable choppy sentences for him in order for him to communicate what he's reading. Again, he can read. Obviously, he can read. But it's the proficiency with which he reads, or the lack thereof, that is concerning. It's the president of the United... Listen, what other dimension and what other area of his leadership and his job functions is he underwater because of his cognitive deficit? It didn't used to be this way. I mean, Donald Trump's never been an intellectual. He's never been a reader. He's never been a guy who, picked up a book and read for leisure. No, of course not. He's a dipshit. He's a dum-dum. He's not intellectually curious. And I guess it's because of that he stopped reading probably in elementary school. And now he's kind of, it's arrested development. He's stuck in see Dick run, see Jane do whatever Jane does in the elementary school books that we were all trained how to read.
This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish, okay?
Again, for all of the talk in thumbnails and titles on YouTube videos from people in my cohort, people who do my job, who are quite alarmist in the way that they present to get you to click on a video to watch what the content is. There's a lot of bombshell this and radical this and oh my God, and it's the end of the world kind of talk. And some of that's just kind of how the business has to work based on YouTube and the algorithms and stuff. I try not to do that. I try to kind of play it straight on what I'm talking about. Of course, I use capital letters and shit, but what took place yesterday with Jimmy Kimmel is absolutely a bombshell. It is absolutely a dangerous moment in American history, the likes of which we've really never seen, where the government is taking part in the censorship, in the firing of someone for their political speech, a comedian, no less, justifying what they've done. Donald Trump admitting he played a role back in July, and now they're acting like he didn't have anything to do with this. I mean, remember when it was like a CPAC meeting and Elon Musk with his dipshit sunglasses and his chainsaw, the chainsaw of bureaucracy. And many thought he was out of his brain on ketamine in this moment, explaining that comedy is now legal again. It's now legal to tell jokes again. Remember this, and then let's talk about the absolutely unjustified firing, or at least temporary suspension, of Jimmy Kimmel.
And have like a sense of humor, So, I mean, the left wanted to make comedy illegal, Like you can't make fun of anything. So then it was like, comedy sucks. It's like, nothing's funny. You can't make fun of anything. It's like, legalize comedy. Yeah. Legalize comedy.
Unwell. That man is unwell. Is comedy legal again? Is it? Is it legal? Can we now tell jokes? Can I say what I want to say, especially related to politics, without fear of reprisal from the dear leader? Can I? I don't think so. This is from the New York Times. ABC pulls Jimmy Kimmel off air for Charlie Kirk comments. Mr. Kimmel faced some criticism for comments he made on Monday about the motives of the man who was accused of killing Mr. Kirk, the conservative activist. I'm going to play for you the clip. I've got 3 paragraphs here to read from the New York Times, and then I'm going to play for you the clip in question. I'm going to blur the watermark of the conservative activist hit organization that put this out there, that put their watermark on somebody else's content. That's fantastic. But this is an inflection point. And it's not, look, I'm not whining about it because this is what I do for a living and my livelihood and the country is in danger. It's also going to roll downhill. Shit rolls downhill. This shit is starting with Jimmy Kimmel and others. Stephen Colbert also lost his job. But the next set of targets are independent media, people on YouTube, people who there is no license to deal with here. They will come for us because all of the previous promises that they're bringing free speech back and comedy is now legal, all of that's lies. They're hypocrites and liars. You cannot trust what they say. We should follow and act accordingly based on what they do, not what they say. This is from the New York Times. ABC announced on Wednesday evening that it was pulling Jimmy Kimmel's late night show indefinitely after criticism of comments he made on Monday about the motives of the man who was accused of fatally shooting the conservative activist. Let's call him what he was, a racist Christian nationalist bigot, Charlie Kirk, last week. Brendan Carr, the Federal Communications Commission chair, sharply criticized Mr. Kimmel's comments on a podcast earlier on Wednesday. Nexstar, an owner of many local stations throughout the United States, said shortly before ABC's announcement that it was preempting episodes of Jimmy Kimmel Live for the, quote, foreseeable future. Nexstar strongly objects to recent comments made by Mr. Kimmel concerning the killing of Charlie Kirk and will replace the show with other programming in its ABC-affiliated markets, the company said. So what was it? The offending comment, the strongly objectionable comment from Jimmy Kimmel. This is it. Again, the blur in the corner is blurring the organization because I don't want to platform them or give them any notoriety. Brent Bozell. Here you go. This is what was so offensive that got him fired.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. In between the finger pointing, there was grieving. On Friday, the White House flew the flags at half-staff, which got some criticism. But on a human level, you can see how hard the president is taking this.
My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks? They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. and it's going to be a beauty.
Yes. Okay. He's at the fourth stage of grief, construction. There's demolition, construction. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish, okay?
He didn't make light of the assassination of Charlie Kirk. He didn't mock Charlie Kirk at all. He's talking specifically about the response to the killing of Charlie Kirk, how they're all acting as though they're deeply moved and beside themselves with grief, yet Donald Trump can't stop yammering about the goddamn ballroom. That they're scoring political points, blaming the left, blaming they did this, they organized this, they killed Charlie. That's what he's pointing out. There was nothing offensive about this. There was nothing objectionable about this, Nexstar. What this is, you got to follow the money here. There's a merger happening, and that's why they're listening to Donald Trump about canceling him. Now, listen. This was announced yesterday before this announcement was made. Brendan Carr, what a coincidence. He happened to go on Benny Johnson's show. The FCC commission chair went on with Russian money receiver Benny Johnson, a guy who got millions, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars from the Kremlin to spread enemy talking points. This agent of a hostile foreign power, Benny Johnson, guested the FCC commissioner, and this is them talking about it. And I want you to pay attention and remember, comedy's legal now, as announced by one of the dear leader's best friends, Elon Musk. It's legal, so I want you to listen to how he frames the justification for this, that the FCC has the full right to do all the things they want to do because there's a license involved. But he's talking about news. He's talking about news distortion and broadcast hoaxes. How did a comedian telling jokes run afoul of those particular rules? Keep that in mind when you watch Brendan Carr.
And those TV stations are, in the main, owned by independent companies, independent from Comcast and Disney. But Disney and Comcast both own some televisions themselves. So start from the idea that you have national programmers that create the show, including the Kimmel show, and then they're given to and distributed over licensed TV stations. It's the licensed TV stations that have the public interest standard, including those TV stations that Comcast and Disney own. So FCC regulatory action focuses on those individual stations. And one thing that we're trying to do is to empower those local stations to serve their own communities. And the public interest means you can't be running a narrow partisan circus and still meeting your public interest obligations. It means you can't be engaging in a pattern of news distortion. We have a rule on the book that interprets a public interest standard that says news distortion is something that is prohibited. Likewise, we have a rule that addresses broadcast hoaxes. And so, again, over the years, the FCC has stepped back from enforcing it, and I don't think it's been to the benefit of anybody. Just look at the credibility of these legacy media. It's absolutely through the floor. They used to be able to say at least they were more trustworthy than Congress, but now they're even less trustworthy than Congress. And so I think as a business matter for them, something has to change. And at the FCC, we need to reinvigorate this. So again, there's actions that we can take on licensed broadcasters. And frankly, I think that it's really sort of past time that a lot of these licensed broadcasters themselves push back on Comcast and Disney and say, listen, we are going to preempt. We are not going to run Kimmel anymore until you straighten this out, because we licensed broadcaster, are running the possibility of fines or license revocation from the FCC if we continue to run content that ends up being a pattern of news distortion. So I think, again, Disney needs to see some change here, but the individual licensed stations that are taking their content, it's time for them to step up and say, this garbage, to the extent that that's what comes down the pipe in the future, isn't something that we think serves the needs of our local communities. But this sort of status quo is obviously not acceptable where we are.
This is a clear violation of the First Amendment of the Constitution and the guarantees therein, the protection of our natural rights to free speech, because the government is involved in this. Do not give these people the benefit of the doubt that they're not up to their neck in this. I'm going to talk about that next with Brendan Carr, who's now making the rounds on CNBC and a bunch of financial to try to cool the markets. Because let me tell you, if the government gets in the business of restricting people's political speech, telling comedians what jokes they can and can't tell, even distasteful ones, which Jimmy Kimmel did not tell, we are in a different country than we were the day before. This, though, is about the money. This, though, is about the merger. They are ceding Donald Trump what his wildest fantasies are because they want something from him. Here's Brian Stelter on CNN explaining, as he, rightfully so, follows the money.
Nexstar already owns lots of TV stations. It wants to merge with Tegna, which owns lots of other stations. In order to do that, it needs Brendan Carr, the FCC chair's permission, and it actually needs the FCC to change the regulations entirely about how many stations an individual company can own. So Nexstar has all of this pending business before the government. Tegna also does, and there's another big station owner called Sinclair that also has business pending before the government. So what do we know tonight? We know that both Nexstar and Sinclair called up ABC this afternoon, complained about Kimmel, and said they were yanking the show off their stations. ABC subsequently yanked the show nationwide. So we know that two major TV station owners, both of which need to curry favor with the Trump administration, were the ones that most loudly and vocally condemned Kimmel and said they were going to not air the show tonight and in the coming nights. It's an Occam's razor situation. It's exactly what it looks like.
This is scary. For all of the people who whine and complain about censorship and cancel culture and freedom of speech, this is where we are. But conservatives aren't concerned with those things. They're concerned with freedom of speech for themselves. Civil liberties for me and not for thee. That should be the new mantra for the Republican Party. Whatever the dear leader wants, if his sensibilities are offended, we must make him feel good. We must apply the salve, the balm of violating the Constitution to his little weak ego. His insecurities must be protected, says the Republican Party, as they violate the same principles they've claimed for decades to be stalwart protectors of.
I can't find a single prominent conservative voice in the country that even remotely wanted or hoped or was pushing to get Jimmy Kimmel taken off the air.
You know how I know Republicans are liars? You know how I know Republicans are hypocrites? Do you want to know how I know? Well, it's because I watch what they say. I listen to the words that they speak, and then I juxtapose that speech against their actions. And I got 3 very brief clips for you right now. This all involves the firing, the dismissal, the indefinite suspension of Jimmy Kimmel, a comedian for telling jokes about Donald Trump. That's what this is about. This is about the government using the weight and width and breadth and power, immense power of the executive branch to violate Jimmy Kimmel's constitutional rights, and it's not going to start with him, or it didn't start with him, and it's not going to end with him. This is going to start working its way down to the low levels like me, like others in my space. Let's begin with Should I begin with Donald Trump? Let's begin with J.D. Vance. I was going to play him third, but let's play him first since he's second in command. Here's J.D. Vance back in February at the Munich Security Conference talking about the protection of free speech. The how does he put it? Under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, says the always truthful J.D. Vance, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square. Agree or disagree, says J.D. Vance, the non-hypocrite fucking liar.
Our own government encouraged private companies to silence people who dared to utter what turned out to be an obvious truth. So I come here today not just with an observation, but with an offer. And just as the Biden administration seemed desperate to silence people for speaking their minds, so the Trump administration will do precisely the opposite, and I hope that we can work together on that. In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town, And under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree.
Now, the reason I started with J.D. Vance, obviously that is untrue. He's a liar. He's a hypocrite. The man who called the man he works for America's Hitler and then raised his right hand to serve with him. Yes, sir. Yes, dear leader. Yes, America's Hitler. I'm here to serve, sir. He's following the lead of his boss. And Donald Trump started this administration promising to protect free speech, that government censorship was over. This is from his inaugural address on January 20th of this year.
After years and years of illegal and unconstitutional federal efforts to restrict free expression, I will also sign an executive order to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America.
He's going to stop all government censorship. He's going to bring back free speech to America. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Donald Trump. Do you believe that? 100 days later, on his 100th day in office, he was in Warren, Michigan, giving a rally speech as president of the United States a second time. And he said this, doubling down on his protection of free speech and the Constitution and bringing, we all have the freedom of speech now in America, he said.
And I banned all government censorship and restored free speech in America. We have free speech. We didn't have free speech.
He banned government censorship. He brought back free speech to America. Thank you, Donald Trump. Thank you, sir. With tears in my eyes, I thank you. Big, strong man. Who believes this? Who believes this? Because yesterday, he celebrated the firing, the indefinite dismissal of Jimmy Kimmel. He posted on True Social, great news for America. The ratings challenged Jimmy Kimmel show is canceled. Congratulations to ABC for finally having the courage to do what had to be done. Kimmel has zero talent and worse ratings than even Colbert, if that's possible. That leaves Jimmy and Seth, two total losers on fake news NBC. Their ratings are also horrible. Do it, NBC. President DJT. Not only is he celebrating the dismissal of Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel, he's put a target on the back of Seth Meyers and Jimmy Fallon. People who just tell jokes for a living. This is where we are with the freedom of speech in America that Donald Trump brought back. This is where we are with Donald Trump ending government censorship as he, the head of the executive branch, 1/3 of the government, a co-equal branch of government, is celebrating. Now, what he's not saying there is the role that he played in this. You know what's interesting is morons like Sean Hannity are out there right now saying, find me a Republican. There's not a single Republican of any prominence whatsoever who called for the firing of Jimmy Kimmel. Can you, speaking of hypocrisy and liars and just insane, the things they expect us to believe from them, watch this from Sean Hannity and then, spoiler alert, I almost said shocker, and then I made it spoiler alert, so it came out spoiler alert. I'm going to have some receipts to prove him wrong. Watch Sean Hannity be the dipshit we all know him to be.
The left already, starting with Humpty Dumpty, fake news, CNN, J.B. Pritzker, Gavin Newsom, predictably claiming this is conservative censorship. The MAGA crowd, Donald Trump got Jimmy Kimmel. That is false. I can't find a single prominent conservative voice in the country that even remotely wanted or hoped or was pushing to get Jimmy Kimmel taken off the air. Nobody, it just was simple. People changed the channel.
You can't, Sean Hannity? You can't? You can't find a single prominent conservative voice in the country, in the entire country, that even remotely wanted or was pushing to get Jimmy Kimmel taken off the air? You can't find one? How about we go right to the top, Sean Hannity, you fucking gross liar? How about that? How about this tweet from July? This post on True Social from July from Donald Trump, your dear leader. The word is, and it's a strong word at that, says Donald Trump, Jimmy Kimmel is next to go in the untalented late night sweepstakes, and shortly thereafter, Fallon will be gone. These are people with absolutely no talent who were paid millions of dollars for, in all cases, destroying what used to be great television. It's really good to see them go. I hope I played a major part in it. That smacks to me, that rings in my ear very, very conspicuously as though that was a prominent conservative voice in the country that remotely wanted or was pushing to get Jimmy Kimmel taken off the air. Sean Hannity, you fucking idiot. Or am I at risk for calling the shadow chief of staff, Sean Hannity, a fucking idiot? Am I at risk for calling Donald Trump a fat, illiterate moron? Am I now at risk? Am I under threat? Are they going to push to have my channel removed from YouTube? From Facebook? Are they going to push these tech companies to regulate the speech of people who are just being critical? Isn't that against the ethos of conservatives? Isn't that against the fundamental principles of free speech absolutists like J.D. Vance, like Donald Trump, like Charlie Kirk, the man they're celebrating, the man that predicated all of this? I am unafraid. Am I nervous that they're coming for me? Yeah, of course. But unafraid. Bring it. Do your worst. You're cowards. You're un-American. You violate the sanctity of the oath to the Constitution that you've taken on multiple occasions, J.D. Vance, Donald Trump. Unlikely Sean Hannity's actually taken an oath to the Constitution because, he's just an entertainer on Fox News. What do you think? I invite you to this conversation. We can have it in the comments below the video, whether you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. I would appreciate that. You can also call the voicemail line 714-576-4054. And of course, as always, you can email me daily@dollemore.com.
And thank goodness for companies now who are firing nurses and teachers and people like Jimmy Kimmel, because people should not be able to celebrate others' deaths.
The chairman of the Federal Communications Commission is now making the rounds, not just on Benny Johnson's program, the man who took money from the Kremlin, who was paid hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars from Vladimir Putin himself to run with propaganda from the state of Russia, our enemy, a hostile foreign power. The guy who acted as an unregistered agent of Russia is now hosting the FCC chairman, Brendan Carr. And there are demands being made of Jimmy Kimmel right now that they're going to force Jimmy Kimmel to donate to the racist, un-American, bigoted Turning Point USA organization. They want him to give his money that he's earned from his paycheck, his private funds. They want to force him to donate to a racist political organization. This is a serious situation, and it's being celebrated by, championed by Brendan Carr, who, by the way, is up to his neck in this. I got clips here where they're asking a question. Did you have anything more personal to do with this? Did you have any personal involvement in the dismissal, the temporary or the indefinite suspension of Jimmy Kimmel? And you will not be shocked to learn he refuses to answer the question. He pivots and answers a question that wasn't asked. But he's also celebrating the firing. Brian Stelter put this out. He said, I asked FCC Chair Brendan Carr if he had any new comment now that ABC has pulled Jimmy Kimmel's show, and he sent me this GIF. Celebrate. Raise the roof, says Brendan Carr. Jimmy Kimmel has had his First Amendment rights violated by the executive branch of the federal government. Because if you think Donald Trump didn't have something involvement in this, didn't have something to do with this, you're giving fascists the benefit of the doubt. You're legitimizing them by believing that, by putting that out into the ether. Brendan Carr is also thick as thieves, up to his neck involved in this. Here he is explaining that Sinclair is like the Fox News of television affiliates. They own a bunch of ABC stations, but others. You very likely, if you live in a medium-sized metropolitan area, a medium-sized municipality in this country, you likely, Boise, Idaho, that small town has a Sinclair station. You likely have a Sinclair station. I would look it up. And I would not watch them. I would not do business with Sinclair. But this is Brendan Carr celebrating the fact that Sinclair is going to force Jimmy Kimmel to make a donation to Charlie Kirk, the late Charlie Kirk's racist political organization.
According to the New York Times, late Wednesday, I'm just quoting here, Sinclair, another owner of many local TV stations, said that it would also suspend Mr. Kimmel's program and called on Mr. Kimmel to apologize and make a meaningful personal donation to Mr. Kirk's family and the activist political group Turning Point USA. Do you think that's an appropriate remedy of the situation?
I think Sinclair has every right to call for that. Again, Sinclair affiliates with Disney. They take Disney contract. They have a contractual relationship with Disney, and that's between the two of them to figure out, what's going to make sense to make both of them comfortable with the relationship going forward. But again, over the years, it would be unthinkable for Sinclair, for Nexstar, for local TV stations to actually say, you know what? We're not going to take this particular programming that's coming out of New York and Hollywood and send it to Pennsylvania and Utah. And so the idea that local broadcasters feel like they can push back, I think that's a much, much healthier dynamic for the country right now.
Imagine that. Imagine if your employer forced you as a condition of employment to donate to the American Nazi Party. It's not too far off the mark. Charlie Kirk was a racist, Christian nationalist bigot. He had nothing but venom and vitriol for black people, for women, for gays, for transgender Americans. He was a vile, sinister, malign influence, a cancer on the body politic of the United States of America. Doesn't mean that his killing was justified or should be celebrated. Doesn't mean that at all. But he was what he was. He lived his life as he lived his life. We can't be forced to celebrate the accomplishments of a white supremacist. But apparently, according to the Federal Communications Commission chair, a company has every right to demand that Jimmy Kimmel donate to the American Nazi Party. Fantastic. The same interview, he was asked, did you have anything personal to do with this? Did you have any role to play personally in the dismissal, the indefinite suspension of Jimmy Kimmel? And notice, like I say, the thing that's not said is often more important than the thing that was said. Notice that he does not answer the question.
I guess I'd start off by asking, did you play a role in this beyond your public comments? I believe they took place yesterday morning on a podcast in which you said we can do this the easy way or the hard way in terms of changing conduct on Kimmel, or you said there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead. Was that enough, in your opinion, to spur this move by Disney, or were you involved beyond that?
I think there's a much bigger shakeup that's underway right now. I think people, again, try to focus narrowly on the specifics here. But if you just back up, I think ever since President Trump won the election, it's created a permission structure for markets, including the media market, to rationalize. I mean, again, if you look at the ratings for late night television, they've been in an absolute nosedive for years. But for some reason, these companies felt like they had to continue to subsidize it. And I think that's ending. And again, I think your viewers get this, but think about the business side of this. You have the national programmers, Disney, that create this content, and you've got individualized licensed TV stations all across the country. And they're required, they've been for years, required to respond to the needs of their local communities and viewers. And I think it was those local communities and viewers that were saying, you know, we don't like this stuff anymore. And so Nexstar was the first mover here, said we're going to preempt this program, we're going to black it out. Again, that's what you're supposed to do, a healthy, functioning market. So I think, again, people sort of focus on, you know, narrow specifics, but there's a much bigger shift that's taking place right now in the media ecosystem. And frankly, I think that's a good thing.
This is a wild moment in American history where they are just in public violating the Constitution of the United States, saying with their mouths one thing and then acting a different way, which it is hypocrisy. It is what we should expect from them. But who knew this quickly they would try to cancel the Constitution, cancel the First Amendment, and not for conservatives, for liberals. If you're a critic of Donald Trump, you are under threat. I got one more, and this is kind of unrelated. It's unrelated to the FCC thing. But the White House Faith Office, the White House Faith Office, Jenny Korn is her name, is celebrating, saying thank goodness for companies who are now firing nurses and teachers and people like Jimmy Kimmel who people should not be able to celebrate others' deaths in a very public way. That's interesting because I've got a clip of J.D. Vance doing the same thing. Spoiler alert on that too. Here's Jenny Korn, a representative of the White House Faith Office. Jesus would very much like to have a word, Ms. Korn.
But now we're on alert. We know who those people are because they have told us who they are and they've shown their evil. And thank goodness for companies now who are firing nurses and teachers and people like Jimmy Kimmel, because people should not be able to celebrate others' deaths in a very public way and then keep their jobs. So congratulations to companies in America for doing the right thing finally.
People should not be able to celebrate others' deaths in a public way and keep their jobs. Somebody call J.D. Vance and let him know that Jenny Korn wants him shit canned.
So I was talking to I said Secretary of Defense, but our new Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. And I was talking to Secretary Hegseth, and you know what he said? He said, you know what, Mr. Vice President, we don't see any of these drug boats coming into our country. They've completely stopped. And I said, I know why. I would stop too. Hell, I wouldn't go fishing right now in that area of the world. But that is what a military that is dedicated to its purpose and a commander-in-chief that is dedicated to the national good can do. If we just have our actual government fighting for the interests of Americans and nobody else, we can make this country safer, we can protect your jobs, we can make sure you've got the best wages anywhere in the world, and we can stop this terrible poison from coming into our country. We just needed a president who was willing to fight for you, and now we've got one.
Yeah, that's the Vice President of the United States just yesterday making jokes about murdering fishermen in boats off the coast of Venezuela. No due process. No proof that what they claim they did. No proof that these people were drug boat pilots, captains. It's a summary execution on the part of the United States, killing civilians using the power and might of the United States military, and then our jackass vice president's making jokes about it. But again, the free speech rules that are now in place, these new rules, they only apply to liberals and critics of Donald Trump and the administration. They don't apply to J.D. Vance. They didn't apply to Charlie Kirk, who spoke with his absolute political violence on a daily basis. No, they don't apply to him. They don't apply to Donald Trump. They only apply to Jimmy Kimmel. and Stephen Colbert, and eventually me and others who do my work on YouTube, on Facebook.
Well, somebody has fabricated a monstrous big lie that Israel had something to do with Charlie Kirk's horrific murder. This is insane.
It would be very strange if you clicked on a video of me on Twitter or Blue Sky, or it wouldn't be Twitter because I don't post content on Twitter. I don't take part in the Nazi Twitter, but any other social media, Facebook or here, we'll just use those. You would be very alarmed and perplexed if you came to a video of me earnestly telling you, I deny having anything to do with the murder of Charlie Kirk. It is insane for you to assert that I had something to do with killing him. It is false. It is outrageous. Charlie Kirk was a giant. He was a once-in-a-century talent who championed freedom and love of America. You would be like, what in the fiddle and fuck is going on here? Why is Jesse so vociferously defending the obvious, right? That would be your response. That's weird. Why is Jesse denying having involvement in that? Well, you should have the same question about Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, who once again is making he did it in an interview with like Newsmax or somebody earlier, but now he's making a dedicated video, posting it to his official account on Twitter, denying that he killed Charlie Kirk. If there was ever an action that made me think, did Benjamin Netanyahu kill Charlie Kirk? It's this video that he posted. And it was accompanied with this tweet: Charlie Kirk was a great man. He deserves honor. Last night at 11:04 p.m. Eastern Time, this is the video. Embrace yourself. There's a whole bunch of just insane heaping of obsequious praise on the racist Christian nationalist bigot Charlie Kirk, all kinds of distortions and rewriting of history from the fascist leader of Israel, the man who is now administering a genocide against the Palestinian people, a systematic erasure of an entire population of people. And it's interesting that this video that I'm getting ready to play begins with him quoting Goebbels, the Nazi, as Benjamin Netanyahu acts as though he is a member of the Nazi party as he tries to exterminate wholesale an entire population of human beings.
Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi propaganda minister, said that the bigger the lie, the faster it will spread. Well, somebody has fabricated a monstrous big lie that Israel had something to do with Charlie Kirk's horrific murder. This is insane. It is false. It is outrageous. Charlie Kirk was a giant, a once-in-a-century talent who defended freedom, defended America, defended our common Judeo-Christian civilization. Charlie loved Israel. He loved the Jewish people. He told me so in a letter that he sent me just a few months ago. One of my greatest joys as a Christian, he said, is advocating for Israel and forming alliances with Jews to protect Judeo-Christian civilization. He encouraged me to make the case directly to the American people about how vital Israel is to U.S. national security. He told me, the Holy Land is so important to my life, it pains me to see support for Israel slip away. Now, if Charlie disagreed with a policy of mine or a decision here and there, not only did I not mind, I welcomed it. This is the essence of Charlie. This is the essence of a free country. It's exactly what Charlie stood for. And I knew that his suggestions always came from the heart, from his love for Israel and from his love for the Jewish people. A few weeks before his death, I spoke to Charlie. I invited him to visit Israel again. And sadly, that won't happen. Now some are peddling these disgusting rumors, perhaps out of obsession, perhaps with Qatari funding. What I do know is this: Charlie Kirk was a great man, and a great man deserves honor, not lies. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. May your memory be a blessing.
So I see your mouth moving, BB. I hear the words that you're speaking, BB. But I don't know that I believe you. I wouldn't have thought you had something to do with it until you started denying that you had something to do with it. Isn't that weird? Isn't that just bizarre? Look, I know we live in a hellscape timeline in our history. I know. Look, I know. Donald Trump is president again after he promised that he was going to do everything that he's done, and people didn't believe him. People are having their livelihoods destroyed, their farms destroyed, their businesses destroyed, their families destroyed. People are being kidnapped off the street. And people who voted for him, or at the very least supported his candidacy, are like, wait, I didn't vote for this. Yeah, the you did. Yes, you did. Nothing is surprising that is happening right now under Donald Trump. Not a single thing. So I get it that we live in a bizarro world. I get it. It's terrible. But given that, taking that into account, why so forceful in the denial? Wouldn't it be best just to say, well, of course we didn't kill Charlie Kirk. I'm not going to address that. That's ridiculous. It's just like I'm not going to deny that I've got a pink and purple unicorn in my podcast studio over here because that's not a thing, and I don't have that. Why deny the thing that should be self-evident, BB? Why go into it quoting Nazis, BB? These are all questions. I don't know. I'll throw it to you and we'll end the video there. I want to hear from you. Let's talk about this in the comments. Is this to distract from the genocide that he's administering right now? Is this because he did have a role and they're just really trying to push back? All of the weird praise on Charlie Kirk, all of the lies about the legacy of Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk's a once-in-a-century talent? Then what am I, a once-in-a-millennium talent? Come on.
That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker.
Yesterday was another hot day in committee for Kash Patel. But this is an article that I'm going to read very briefly, 3 or 4 paragraphs from this Miami Herald article from Julie K. Brown. If there is an expert on the goings-on of Jeffrey Epstein, if there is an expert on the case that brought him in Florida with Alex Acosta, who ended up being Donald Trump's labor secretary, just incestuous, just thick as thieves, these assholes. She is the person. Julie K. Brown, a reporter for the Miami Herald, is a brilliant, intrepid reporter who knows this case forward and backward. I'm going to read 4 paragraphs from her, maybe 3 paragraphs. And then I'm going to play, because she's talking about the testimony, not the testimony, she's talking about the testimony of Kash Patel, but the line of questioning from Thomas Massie, a Republican, and not one of these. He's not some moderate Republican. He's not, who's the dipshit from New York, upstate New York, with the beard and I can't think of his name right now, because I didn't plan on talking about him. That guy, whoever his name is, we'll put his face on screen. You'll know who I'm talking about. He's not that guy who purports to be a moderate or a reasonable Republican. Thomas Massie is the guy who poses with his family for Christmas photos where they're all strapped with AR-15s and weapons of war. He's a conservative Republican, and he was giving Kash Patel the business, releasing a partial list of perpetrators who acted in concert with Jeffrey Epstein. And we're going to get to that. It is remarkable. Seriously, kudos, I guess, to Thomas Massie. Here's the headline from the Miami Herald. Again, Julie K. Brown. GOP lawmaker makes blockbuster claim FBI has at least 20 names of suspected Epstein clients. A Republican lawmaker revealed for the first time Wednesday that there is a quasi list of suspected clients of sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein that can be compiled from a series of witness statements and other evidence gathered by the FBI. Representative Thomas Massie, Republican of Kentucky, told the House Judiciary Committee that he thinks the FBI has the names of at least 20 people tied to Epstein, including prominent figures in the music industry, finance, politics, and banking. Massey's statement comes as FBI Director Kash Patel testified under oath before Congress over 2 days of contentious hearings, during which he continued to insist there is no client list, quote unquote, and no credible evidence that Epstein trafficked underage girls to anyone other than himself. There's a cover-up, folks. They're covering up for Jeffrey Epstein. And why would they do that? Why would they do that? It has to be, it seems self-evident, because Donald Trump is involved up to his neck, and they need to make sure the dear leader isn't wrapped up in this. Otherwise, why would they protect anybody else? Their entire existence is dedicated to the prospect of protecting Donald Trump, not the billionaires and the rock stars and the magicians on this list. One final paragraph here, but Massey cited files used by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, which summarize interviews with witnesses and suspects. And this, the article goes on with all of the quotes from Thomas Massie, but why do that? This is a video medium. I'll just show you the line of questioning, the statement that is being read, the questions that are being pressed upon Kash Patel. And you can see Kash Patel squirm in his chair, unable to answer these questions, not able to dodge, not able to sufficiently protect Donald Trump. Here's that partial list with the occupations listed of people. Some of these people, we likely know who they are. When he says a royal prince or whatever, we know who they're talking about. But some of these people we don't know. And there needs to be investigations to find out who they are and what crimes, horrible, disgusting, reprehensible, loathsome crimes they brought against children.
Director Patel, I watched some of your Senate hearing yesterday when Senator Kennedy asked you, you've seen most of the files, who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these women to besides himself? You replied, according to the transcript, there is no credible information that he trafficked them to anyone else. You also said somewhere in the hearing and here today that the problem is that the case files are constrained by limited search warrants from 2006 to 2007 and that the non-prosecution agreement hamstrung future investigations. Those constraints only apply to the Southern District of Florida. They do not apply to the Southern District of New York, the location of the 2019 sex trafficking indictment, which produced many things, including a series of FD 302 documents. According to victims who cooperated with the FBI in that investigation, these documents in FBI possession, your possession, detail at least 20 men, including Mr. Jess Staley, CEO of Barclays Bank, who Jeffrey Epstein trafficked victims to, victims including minors, such as Virginia Roberts Ufree, may she rest in peace. That list also includes at least 19 other individuals, one Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, one magician, at least 6 billionaires, including a billionaire from Canada. We know these people exist in the FBI files, the files that you control. I don't know exactly who they are, but the FBI does. Have you launched any investigations into any of these people, and have you seen these 302 documents?
Sir, I have asked my FBI agents to review the entirety of the Epstein files and bring forth any credible information. And we're working with Congress not only to divulge that information and produce it to you, but any investigations that arise from any credible investigation will be brought. There have been no new materials brought to me launching a new indictment.
So is the loophole here, or is it your assertion that these victims aren't credible, that the 302s maybe didn't produce credible statements that rise to a probable cause?
It's not my assertion, sir. It's the assertion of two different United States attorneys' offices from 3 separate administrations who investigated those same materials in live time.
Are the 302 documents in the FBI's possession?
They reviewed all that, yes, sir.
And so have you reviewed those 302 documents where the victims name the people who victimized them?
If I personally know, but the FBI has.
So how can you sit here and in front of the Senate and say there are no names?
I said
I named one today.
I said we are not in the practice at the Department of Justice FBI of releasing victims' names.
A Hollywood producer worth a few $100 million, one royal prince, one high-profile individual in the music industry, one very prominent banker, one high-profile government official, one high-profile former politician, one owner of a car company in Italy, one rock star, one magician, and at least 6 billionaires, and then I don't know why he had that one from Canada. Burn them to the ground, every single one. Bring them to justice. Compile the evidence. Impanel a grand jury. I want to see indictments. I want to see prosecutions. I want to see prison terms. Your wealth, your influence, your popularity should not be a defense. It should not be a shield when you victimize. If you victimized children. And I've said it before, I don't care who you are. There's talk that Bill Clinton's involved. Not surprising. Burn him to the ground. For all of the philanthropy of Bill Gates, burn him to the ground if he's involved. Same goes for Donald Trump and the rest of this list. The only people who aren't saying that are Republicans. Every single voice on the left that I hear from is release it all. Whoever's involved needs to go down in a blaze of glory. Every single one of them. You're not going to catch me defending abusers of children. I am consistent. Something that the Republican Party should take a page out of this playbook. Consistency, a lack of hypocrisy. Donald Trump is involved. He was, by Jeffrey Epstein's own account, from independent sources, the best friend for 15 years. Here's to another year of wonderful secrets, Jeffrey. You and I have so much in common, Jeffrey. Enigmas are ageless, Jeffrey. Thanks to Julie K. Brown. Go check this article out. I'll link it below. And I would love to hear from you. Make sure you're subscribed. If I bring you value, if you like the cut of my jib or the style with which I present, whatever, please consider subscribing. It is free. Click the button. Go like and follow the Facebook page, Dollemore Daily. All of these things increase the amount of truth that gets disseminated on these platforms. And when freedom of speech is under threat like it is right now, you could do your part by just sharing and liking this content to expand the reach that we have. You can also sound off in the comments. Tell me how you think. Let's have a conversation there. Or you can call the voicemail line, 714-576-4054. I would appreciate it. Email me, daily@dollemore.com. And if you still are like, you're champing at the bit, I got some more support that I want to give and I want to help, $2 a month, you can help support this work. You can help me. You can be a producer of this content with your $2 a month. Click the join button below this video on YouTube, become a channel member, or go over to patreon.com/IDoubtIt podcast. I love and appreciate you, your engagement, your activism, your organizing, and your concern about this country. I'll see you next time. Be genuine and take care of one another.